Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of First Down Fantasy. As always, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Logan.
And today we are going into part 2 of our running back rankings. We're going to be ranking running backs 11 through 20. And if you have not seen part 1 of our video, just go click on that. You'll find out who we have in the top 10. But if you just want to watch it here, that's cool too. So we're going to hop right into it. If you want to just, again, check out our top 10. That way you don't get lost and you don't go, where'd that guy come from? Because he's probably already gone.
Yep.
But we're going to start off real quick here. Number 11. We are going with Clyde EdwardsHelaire from the Kansas City Chiefs. And I feel ridiculous that I have Clyde EdwardsHelaire ranked higher than the Kansas City Chief fan sitting across me right now who had him at 12 and I had him at 11. But my reasoning was that when I looked at the top 10 guys that we had out, I said, who's the first guy I want? And it was like, I think I want Clyde. And it's based on pure opportunity. He's going to be playing in the best offense in the league, in my opinion, in Kansas City. And you want to have a running back that's in the Andy Reid system. And I think the big number to look at for Clyde is the big number 5. Big number 5 was how many touchdowns he had last year. Clyde EdwardsHelaire did not really perform as where everyone was drafting him, who were drafting him in the first round, which Logan did, and I said it would be a mistake. And it was a mistake as a first-round guy because, you know what, you might say that, you might not. But for me, it's if he had more touchdowns, that guy is easily worth where you drafted him last year. But he only had 5. If he gets more of those goal line opportunities or if he converts on more of those big plays, then he has an unbelievable year. And with Pat Mahomes and that offense, it's going to be clicking. So that's who I want.
Yeah, this is the crazy thing. This is from Twitter at FFBallBlast posted this. So Clyde, before Lev Bell showed up in Week 7, was 2nd in rushing yards, 4th in yards per attempt, 4th in yards after contact per attempt, 2nd in avoided tackles, tied for 6th in carries inside the 5, and tied for 7th in fantasy points. Like, he was actually having a very good season. He just couldn't score a touchdown to save his life. Like, I'm a Chiefs fan, which honestly is probably part of the reason I have him lower than you. I was worried about putting him too high just because I'm very into him as a player. So I didn't want to have the bias. So I might have dropped him a spot or two because of that. But the O-line is a lot better this year. The running scheme is changing up a little bit. Like, I'm not going to break that down. That's a little bit too complicated for me to explain. But they're changing the running scheme. I think they're going to have a lot more push at the goal line with the guys they brought in. And I think it's a situation where Andy Reid probably knows we couldn't count on the running game at all last year. It was a mistake. We struggled to close games because we couldn't run the ball. And I think that's going to change this year.
Yeah, and normally running backs take a big jump from year 1 to year 2, so expect Clyde to really have a good year, I think. Moving on to number 12 from the Washington football team is Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson last year was kind of a little bit of a dark horse. A lot of people weren't sure what the wide receiver turned running back was going to be able to do in Washington, and you know what? He had a little bit of a rocky start, but once he started getting going, Antonio Gibson proved to be a very viable fantasy option. I feel bad that I traded him midway through the year, but I still I got a great trade package for him. But you know what? Antonio Gibson is now one of the 2 options on that team that you want to have. It's either going to be Terry McLaurin or Antonio Gibson.
Yep.
And with Ryan Fitzpatrick, you know they're going to really spread the field, which will probably mean a little bit more dump-off passes for Antonio Gibson. And I think that O-line is good enough for him to actually do some work, and he was averaging 13.5 fantasy points per game when he was there, which is 17th for the running backs, and that's really good for a guy that people weren't sure on at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, like as you said, he was a wide receiver. I think he had 36 rushes in college or something like that. Like he was a late convert to running back. So I think there was a little bit of a learning curve, but you know what that tells us? He's a very good pass catcher. Like, he's one of the better pass catchers in the league. He's a huge guy. He's got the long speed. Like, he's the complete package as a running back. He's got to continue to learn how to hit the right hole, how to have the vision, all that stuff. But he's a physical force. He was great on the goal line last year. They fed him the ball, especially late. So if he has that same role, maybe he gets a little bit more of the passing work, which I think there'll be a little bit. I mean, there's going to be less passing work for the running backs. Alex Smith absolutely peppered them last year. But if he can hold off J.D. McKissick, stay kind of the third down running back as well, then I think he's going to be absolutely dominant.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to number 13, it's Austin Ekeler from the Los Angeles Chargers. And when I look at Austin Ekeler, I can't believe Logan had him as down as 14. I had Austin Ekeler at number 9. I'm in him on my top 10. I love Austin Ekeler, and I still can't believe Logan shamed him like this. But you know what? It's fair. We all have our disagreements. But when I look at Austin Ekeler, I look at Justin Herbert and his progression he's going to be taking. I think he's going to be a great option. They have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And Austin Ekeler is an unbelievable pass catcher. That's the one thing you look at with Austin Ekeler that you're like, okay, this guy, when healthy, he's exceptional. He had 54 receptions on 65 targets for 403 yards last year, which is insane, and had only 3 TDs.
Yeah.
So that's something you look at, and if he stayed healthy for the whole year, I think he finishes as a top 10 running back easily, and he was getting drafted around there last year. And that LA Charger offense is nothing to like look away from, because they're going to be exceptional.
Yeah, that's one of the offenses I've had the hardest time with all their guys, because it really comes down to what is Justin Herbert in year 2. Like he was dominant last year, but second year is typically where you see the quarterbacks almost take a step back. Like you saw that Baker Mayfield came out and was awesome. He took a bit of a step back. Like you've seen it with some other guys, like Josh Allen, year 2 is a little bit better, but he wasn't a dominant force. Which that's a little bit of my concern with Ekeler. If that offense isn't as good as we expect, he's always been a guy who like he's not a goal line guy. He's a really small running back, which he's unbelievable as a pass catcher, but you're not going to get those goal line touchdowns. I looked at my ranking and I said I probably have him too low, but I struggled to rank him above any of the other guys I have there. Like this is a weird year. I think it shows in drafts too, because I think, like, in terms of wide receivers that are kind of going in the first round, you got Tyreek Hill and then maybe Devontae Adams in most drafts. Like, Travis Kelce is maybe getting into the first round, but it's all running backs. Like, I think you're seeing a lot of the second round is running backs. Like, the running back, I think there's a lot of good ones this year. Like, last year I was looking at a lot of the running backs, and I'm like, there's a lot of guys here I don't like. Like, I heavily targeted Jonathan Taylor for the upside last year, because there wasn't a lot of guys in that range I like. This year, it's the opposite. Like I like Austin Ekeler a lot, but when I look at Antonio Gibson, Clyde EdwardsHelaire, Chris Carson, these are all guys that I just like their all-around game a little bit better.
Yeah, and even when I look at our top 20 guys we have, there's nobody here that I would be upset to take. I would love to take any one of these guys, and Austin Ekeler, I think, is a guy that it all depends on his health, but the pass-catching ability from Ekeler is something that you're really intrigued about, especially if you're in a PPR format.
Yeah.
That's something that is huge.
Yeah, if we're doing all of this half-point PPR. If you're in a full-point PPR, I would have him higher for sure. Like, he's unbelievable. And, again, like I was a little bit worried he wouldn't get targets last year, but Herbert seemed really willing to throw to his running back. So that's a big plus for Ekeler, who, again, very high ceiling, but if he has to get it done as a pure rusher, it's not going to happen. He's got to do it as a pass catcher.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to number 14, we got Chris Carson from the Seattle Seahawks. And I was a Chris Carson owner last year in fantasy, and I feel like every year Chris Carson gets a little bit undervalued. Everyone just kind of, they look at him and they go, oh, you know what, Chris Carson, he's good, but he's kind of a third-round guy. He's a fourth-round guy. And Chris Carson ends up every year overperforming those ADPs and goes for maybe a second-round running back talent, maybe squeaks into the 10 to 15 range when he finishes. But the thing about Chris Carson that everybody knows is he's going to get a lot of work from the Pete Carroll offense because they love to run it, but it's more about how his knees are going to hold up. Because Chris Carson misses roughly 4 or 5 games every season. That's normally what happens. But when he plays, he is exceptional. And especially in that Seattle Seahawks offense, having that running back that is going to be their number one. The only thing that scares me a bit is Carlos Hyde was taking a lot of his touches away last year when he was back.
Yeah.
So is Rashad Penny now going to be that guy where he takes some of those touches away from him? Very possible.
I would not bet on it. Rashad Penny, I think, was a wasted draft pick. He, at least for my money, has never really shown anything in the NFL. I'm not really worried about him stealing anybody's job. But like Chris Carson, I think the big thing for him when I'm looking at this year compared to other years, there was always a big question mark with him if he could catch the ball. But last year he showed he could. He was getting targets. Like he's getting 4 or 5 targets a game on average. Like he was that's a big upgrade for a guy who's always been really good on the ground. He's a ground and pound kind of guy, but
that's my dog. I apologize.
He can give you that also pass catching that will keep him on the field on third down and help you out a lot.
Okay, so yeah, Chris Carson, he caught 36 catches on 44 targets, had 247 yards through the air, and like you said, he really improved in that area of his game, and he finished with 14.1 fantasy points per game on average, which is 13th in the league for running backs last year. I really like his ability, but it's the injury where he's going to miss games, and it was frustrating being a Chris Carson owner last year because it was like right down to the wire every game. Like, is he playing? Is he playing?
Yeah, and that's what it is. Like, I feel like he doesn't miss as many games as people think he does because he's always kind of on the edge of, is he going to play?
Mm-hmm.
So he can be a frustrating guy to own, but I feel like every year we get to the end of the year, we're like, oh, he's the running back 13, he's the running back 12. Like, he's so consistent, and he's always there. You're not like. That's the one thing I will say for Austin Ekeler over Chris Carson. If Austin Ekeler finished as a top 5 back this year, like, that's not out of the realm of possibilities. I don't think there's any way Chris Carson does that. Like, he's a guy who he's going to finish most likely between 10 and 15. But traditionally, this section of running backs, I mean, this year could be different, but this kind of run of running backs, most of them are not going to be effective. Like, they're going to finish halfway decent, but you're going to get kind of like the Josh Jacobs type of guy who he has 3 unbelievable games in the year that pushes his rank up or something like that. So I would rather take the chance on just the pure consistency of Chris Carson, where if he plays, you're getting 10 to 15 points every week.
Easily. Moving on to number 15, we have David Montgomery from the Chicago Bears. And David Montgomery has been in that realm where you pick him and you're like, I'm picking him because he's a starting running back, but I don't know how good he's going to be for me in this fantasy season. But last year was pretty much the same thing. You're like, oh great, David Montgomery is an average run-of-the-mill running back. He's giving me maybe 8 to 9 points, maybe double digits if I'm lucky. But there was the end of the year, David Montgomery, where you looked at him and he was putting up 20 points, 20 points, 21 points, like 18 points. And it's like, is David Montgomery now a top-tier running back option? And I think he can be, again. I like if you're going to take him in the 4th round, 5th round kind of area.
Yeah.
I would really like to get a David Montgomery because I think it all depends on who's their quarterback in Chicago. And if you have Justin Fields as your quarterback, I really love David Montgomery. But anybody else, it's going to be, you're really worried about the game script.
The only thing I'll say with the quarterback thing is they had terrible quarterbacks last year. Like, when he was on that run, it was with Mitch Trubisky as quarterback.
But to be fair, Trubisky was playing out of his mind at the end of the year, too.
Yeah, that's fair. I will say, he was a guy, like 2 years ago when he was a rookie, he came out of the draft. I think a lot of people were really excited about him. I really wanted him. He was an elusive guy in college, and then he came to the NFL, and he just looked very bland. Like, there was nothing about him that I said, yeah. Like, he looked like what James Conner looked like last year, where it's just like, he's not actively bad, but he's not really bringing anything to the table beyond what he gets. Mm-hmm. And then the first half of last year, it was the same thing. You're watching him, he's not really tanking your team, but he's not really doing anything. And then all of a sudden, it was like, he just got up to speed. He got used to the NFL style of play, and he looked dominant. Like, it was night and day compared to what he looked at the first half of the season. He was making guys miss everywhere. He was pushing for extra yards. So if that's what he is moving forward, I think you're getting him at a steal where he's going right now.
Well, and I'll give you 3 names right now. Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara. You know what those 3 names have in common? They're the only 3 guys that had more fantasy points last year than David Montgomery.
Yeah.
David Montgomery was 4th in fantasy points for running backs, and when you look at it, he was averaging 15.8 fantasy points per game. And it's crazy to think of because you don't think of David Montgomery to have that type of season. Because when I was looking at it, when I was making my list, I said, how is David Montgomery a top 5 finish? It's crazy, but when you look at it, it's, again, he had an exceptional finish to the year, which I think really skewed his numbers a bit.
Yeah.
But if he can perform like that for a good chunk of the year, then you are gladly taking him in the 5th or 6th round.
Yeah, I think he's still valued where you don't expect him to be the dominant force he was at the end of the season, which I don't think you can expect him to be. But he's probably, I would bet, somewhere between the two. And I think where he's going now, you're getting him at a value because his upside is there. Like, he showed the upside last season. So if he hits that, you're gold. And I think otherwise, like, again, he's never been actively bad. He's always been startable. You're not excited about it, which if you're taking him at RB 18, RB 19, that's the tier you're in anyway. So I like him a lot this year as a kind of like one of the later running backs off the board. If you're grabbing him as your RB2, I think the upside is there to be a really great pick.
For sure. Number 16, we have Daryl Henderson from the LA Rams. This is one of the moves that is going to be here because Cam Akers is down. If Cam Akers was still healthy, I think I would have had Cam Akers in my top 10.
Yeah, I agree. I think I was so excited for Cam Akers this year.
And I'm still excited for Daryl Henderson because I feel that you're going to get Daryl Henderson, like I've said with Montgomery, you're going to get him in the 5th or 6th round.
Yeah.
And I think Daryl Henderson can really outperform that ranking because Daryl Henderson, to be honest, was outplaying Cam Akers last year until Cam Akers had his run. And it's more... Daryl Henderson, the Rams have loved this guy for a while. Ever since they drafted him, they've been very high on him. And running backs in the Sean McVay offense do really, really well. Like, look at what Todd Gurley did. Look what Cam Akers did at the end of the year. Like, Daryl Henderson even was having really good games at some point last year as well. So if you're going to get a full season of Daryl Henderson, his fantasy output last year did not really... You're not going to know because he had a few games where he was the starter, but who's the guy behind him? Like...
Yeah, I'm blanking.
Like,
I think they drafted someone who's half decent. Like, there's a few guys there, but no one who profiles as a lead back.
Yeah, and there's nobody there that I'm honestly worried that's going to take Henderson's job. So I think Henderson's the guy there, and that offense just got a heck of a lot better with Matt Stafford. So is Matt Stafford going to feed Daryl Henderson? It's very possible. And I think I like the upside of Daryl Henderson.
Yeah, I think he's a high upside pick. If he's the workhorse back, he would be a steal where he's going. Like, he would be dominant. But I think the risk with him is kind of what it was last year, where until, week 12, week 13, it was just a pure timeshare. Like, it was a productive room, but week to week, you had no idea who it was going to be. Mm-hmm. Like, it was Malcolm Brown, Cam Akers, Daryl Henderson. Any week, one of those guys could have gone off. You never knew who was touching the ball. So I think that's why Henderson is where he was. I think Cam Akers is a better running back. I don't think running back talent, when you're talking about that level of guy, matters as much. I think scheme matters. I think offense matters, all that stuff. But my worry is that Henderson may not be the lead guy. If he is, I'm all in. I think he's going to be dominant as long as he's healthy, but just know when you're taking him, do not pencil him in as a surefire weekly start, because he may not be that.
Yep. Moving on to number 17, we have J.K. Dobbins from the Baltimore Ravens. And I just want to point out this, in our Dynasty League, Logan is going to be keeping Jonathan Taylor, Clyde, and J.K. Dobbins. So this guy is just going to have a loaded running back room for his fantasy team. Just going to point that out there first of all.
Not Dynasty, just keeper.
Same thing. Dynasty is keeper.
No, Dynasty, you keep your whole roster.
Whatever. It's the same idea.
No.
Going to get all technical on me, whatever. But all that aside, J.K. Dobbins, he's in probably one of the biggest run-heavy offenses in the league in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to deal with Gus Edwards and obviously Lamar Jackson taking touches away from him. I think the one worry about J.K. Dobbins is he looked really good. Like, I think he was a top 10 running back at the end of the year when he was actually playing fully. Yeah. But it's more of, is Gus Edwards going to take work away from him? And if he does, then, and is the offense going to be more of a little bit more throw heavy with them adding some weapons on the offensive side for Lamar? I think J.K. Dobbins is still obviously the one there.
Yeah.
But it's how much work is he going to get?
Yeah, I think the Gus Edwards questions are warranted, but I think you also saw Gus Edwards. I think he was a top 24 running back while J.K. Dobbins was on his big run. Now, a lot of that was on the back of J.K. Dobbins basically scoring a touchdown every week, which he's most likely not going to do over a full season. I fully believe he's going to be very productive on the ground. He's going to be really efficient. Like, in a offense that the quarterback runs, the running backs are generally more efficient. I think you see that pretty clearly in Baltimore. But the issue is you're not going to get the targets that some of these other guys get. I think he's capable of catching the ball, but just when the options are either dump it off or Lamar Jackson runs it, Lamar Jackson's probably going to run it, and it's probably the right choice. He's a fantastic runner. So I think you're going to see very productive on the ground, score quite a few touchdowns. There's going to be weeks with him where you're disappointed because Gus Edwards happened to score the touchdown, Lamar Jackson had a rushing touchdown, and you get 70 yards on the ground. You maybe only get one target, and that's what you get for the week.
Yeah, I think you're going to be really happy with J.K. Dobbins when Baltimore's up in those games, because there's going to be games that are going to be destroying teams, and it's basically going to be Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins just running the game away.
For sure, yeah.
And you're going to have it where he's just going to have like a whole garbage quarter where he's just going to start picking up a crap ton of fantasy points.
Yeah, I don't think you have the huge upside with J.K. Dobbins because he doesn't have the receiving work. There's a lot of mouths to feed in terms of rushing in that offense. But he's going to be very good week to week. He's going to be, again, he's a really talented player. He's much better than Mark Ingram was when he was in Baltimore, than Gus Edwards is. And Mark Ingram a couple years ago was a top 10 running back. So I think you can see I think his upside is kind of low-end top 10 if everything goes perfect. But I think his, like, worst-case scenario if he starts all year is probably like the RB20 or something like that. Like, I think he's too good and that offense runs too well to not be good.
Yeah. Moving on to number 18, we have our first rookie on this list, and that is Najee Harris from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this is one I'm a little bit not sure of. I think Najee Harris is an unbelievable talent. He played really good for, what was it, Clemson? No,
he's on Alabama.
Alabama, my apologies. Yeah. He was on the Roll Tide. But when he was there, he was exceptional. I think with Pittsburgh, that O-line is not overly great. And I think that offense is, again, going to be a big throw-heavy offense where you're going to see Big Ben throwing it 40, 50 times. So I don't know how much work Najee Harris is going to get. But if in those games, Pittsburgh is a good enough team where they can still be up, where Najee Harris is still going to get work. I don't think that offensive line is as terrible as a lot of people are saying it is. It's not the greatest in the league, but I think it's good enough to where you had guys like James Conner. James Conner was having exceptional years, and James Conner was a little bit injured last year as well. That's why he wasn't doing well. But you had games when Benny Snell was doing well in that offense. So if you have a guy like Najee Harris, I think he's going to be really good for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think this is where me and you disagree on him a little bit. Like, you have him at your running back 19. I have him as my running back 15. I have him in that same tier as an Austin Ekeler, as a Chris Carson, because I do believe he's going to get a lot of volume. Like, I think he's going to get most of the running back touches. I think they're going to try to run the ball a little bit more this year. I don't think the O-line's going to be good, so that caps his upside. But, like, he looked really good at Alabama. He was a really good prospect, and I think he's going to touch the ball a lot of times. So I think the upside is there. I think he's relatively safe. Like, he's a guy I'd be really happy to have this year as an RB2.
Totally agree with that. Moving on to number 19, we have DAndre Swift from the Detroit Lions. And for years, it's pretty much been avoid every Lions player at all costs, unless it was Matt Stafford if you're desperate, or Kenny Golladay you're just taking because he's so good.
Yeah.
But now you don't have no Kenny Golladay. You only have really T.J. Hawkinson, and Jared Goff is crap. Let's be real.
Yep.
So you have DAndre Swift who's left. And I don't know how much he's going to be able to do, because without their weapons on the offensive side, like Kenny Golladay, you only have T.J. Hawkinson. So are they going to load the box, make sure DAndre Swift can't do anything? It's very possible, because when you look at even his receptions, he had 46 receptions to 57 targets. So DAndre Swift was heavily targeted in the passing game, which is a good sign, because with 357 yards, and he finished with 10 TDs total, you know that he's not going to get game scripted out.
No.
He's going to be in there even when they're down big, which is good. PPR leagues, that's awesome. You're going to know he's going to catch the ball a lot. But it's really how much work is he going to be there, because how long is the offense going to be on the field?
Yeah, he's a tough guy to figure out, because there's so much changing on that team. Like, DAndre Swift showed that he's a very good running back. He's a great pass catcher. But you've got a team that's not going to win a lot of games at all. They've got a good O-line, which helps him a lot. But they have no weapons. Like, they've got T.J. Hawkinson and then, like, Rashad Perryman, I guess. Like, they've got nobody. So how much do they load the box? Will Jared Goff throw to his running back? Like, that's kind of been one of those weird things with LA, where they scheme up a lot of touches for their running backs, even in the passing game. But, like, I know Todd Gurley, his last season there, like, he was getting no targets. Now, was that because Todd Gurley was washed and he couldn't get open, or is that because Jared Goff doesn't like throwing to his running back? Like, that's a legitimate question, I think, with DAndre Swift this year. Also, they gave quite a bit of money to Jamal Williams, so how does that break down? Like, it's one of those weird, he's a very talented player, but when you draft him, it comes with a lot of question marks.
Yep. And we're going to finish off this list with number 20, Josh Jacobs from the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, this might seem a little bit low for a guy like Josh Jacobs because he's been known as a guy that's going to get taken maybe early second, late second, maybe third at the worst. Jacobs' talent has been there for years, and you're like, wow, this is a must-own guy. But last year was a little bit of a down year for Jacobs. But even when you look at his numbers, he was averaging 14.3 fantasy points per game on 1,300 total yards. So his work was there. His touchdowns he was at 12 touchdowns last year. So he had he still had a pretty decent year as a running back, finishing 12th for fantasy points per game. But the thing that makes it weird is they added Kenyon Drake, which is a big monkey wrench into this whole system for Josh Jacobs, because how much is Kenyon Drake going to take away from him, and are they going to start throwing the ball more?
Yeah.
I don't know. So I still would, at 20, if Josh Jacobs falls to you that low, I think it's a steal, because Josh Jacobs has the talent to just make sure Kenyon Drake never touches the field, but it's more if he didn't have those explosive plays he did the year before last.
Yeah, my big problem with Josh Jacobs is when I take a running back, I want a week to, I like to stack up on running backs because then I know I have my baseline every week. Running backs are generally consistent. You know what you're getting. Josh Jacobs is really weird because he usually, as you said, ends up high, but he does it off the back of 3 or 4 absolutely monster games where he scores, let's see, he had a 3-touchdown game and 3 2-touchdown games last season. That's where he's really racking up his points. He doesn't catch the ball very much, which is a concern, and that's where I think you see Kenyon Drake will, I don't know if he'll have a lot of fantasy value this year, but he's gonna be the 3rd down back there. So you're getting a 2-down back who he's, if they ever get up big, he's dominant. He will run downhill and he will be great, but it's tough because, again, this is very much a team, how you like to build your team. If you're looking, if you're going high, wide receivers early, and you get those very safe wide receivers, then Josh Jacobs is that kind of chance for a great running back every week. So maybe that's where you want to go. But how I build my teams, I'm very out on Josh Jacobs this season.
Yeah, I think Josh Jacobs is not that running back you're really excited to have, but you're taking him based on his previous years of work and knowing that he can explode for big games, and he will not disappoint you in the sense he's not going to drop 2 points a week.
Yeah.
He will still probably be at worst maybe 6 points to 8 points a week at your worst, but like you said, his upside is 20 points or 30 points.
Yeah.
He has that ability. So I think if you're going to get him where we have him ranked at 20, if he's falling that low in your drafts, I think you take him just for the sheer chance that, you know what, maybe this offense changes a bit and he finally gets back to the form everyone thought he was going to be at.
Yeah, my other concern with him is everyone was kind of laughing at the Raiders early in the offseason because they basically just dismantled their whole offensive line. So, again, he'll probably still be fine, but I think that's a guy. I mean, I'm probably too negative on him. I don't like him. I'm a Chiefs fan. I hate the Raiders, so that might be bleeding into this a little bit. But he has a lot of the kind of red flags that I look at when I'm looking at running backs for fantasy. He hits them, and part of that again is, as I said, it's my play style. It's what I look for when I'm drafting players. And you might look for something different, but just personally, he's a guy I'm out on this year.
Alrighty. And that wraps up our part 2 of our running back rankings. We just ranked the running backs 11 through 20. And again, if you haven't seen part 1, just check it out. You'll find out who we rank number 1 to 10. And as always, thank you for listening. As always, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Logan.
And if you would like and subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. It helps the channel grow. And like I've said before, we're going to post videos every Tuesday and Friday. And next up on the list, we're going to be ranking our wide receivers, where we got them through 1 through 20. And then we're going to do a tight end video, just do the top 10 tight ends.
Yep.
And hopefully by the end of August, we'll maybe do a mock draft where we'll get you guys where our strategies are. And maybe we'll even give you some tips if you're a beginner just getting into fantasy football. We got plenty of ideas coming up, so stay tuned and help supporting us. And, we really would appreciate it. Again, leave comments in the comment section if you have any questions. And you know what? Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.